What if I told you that some of the greatest medical breakthroughs we have, from the polio vaccine to cancer research, all came from one single hidden source? For decades, that source was a total mystery, kind of a ghost in the machine of modern science. So today, let's pull back the curtain on this incredible story. It all starts with a number, 50 million. Just think about that for a second. What could that possibly be? Well, it's a weight, measured in metric tons.
Yeah, you heard that right. If you could somehow gather all the cells that have ever grown from this single source, they would weigh over 50 million metric tons. To give you a picture of that, it's like weighing 100 Empire State Buildings. It's an almost unimaginable scale. And it all came from just one person.
And the impact these cells had, it's just staggering. We're talking about the development of the polio vaccine, something that saved countless lives. They helped us finally get a handle on how viruses work, how cancer grows. They were absolutely essential for things like cloning and gene mapping. They literally became the gold standard in labs everywhere, bought and sold by the billions.
All of these incredible, world-changing achievements came from cells known to science as HeLa cells. HeLa, H-E-L-A, a simple code name, but you know, behind that code was a real person. A person whose story was kept in the dark for over 20 years, even from her own family.
So here's how we're going to walk through this story. First, we'll meet the woman herself, Henrietta, and learn about these so-called immortal cells. Then we'll see how her family was left completely in the dark. After that, we'll cover the long, hard fight for acknowledgement. And finally, we'll wrap up with the lessons from this story that still resonate today.
All right, let's dive right in with the person behind the science, the woman named Henrietta.
Her name was Henrietta Lacks. For decades, the world only knew her as HeLa, just a label on a petri dish that changed medicine. But this is the woman behind it all. The person whose incredible contribution went unrecognized for way, way too long. You see, Henrietta Lacks wasn't a famous scientist or a wealthy philanthropist. She was a poor tobacco farmer from Virginia. She was a wife and a loving mother to 5 children. Her life was a million miles away from the high-tech, sterile labs where her cells would become legendary.
So what made her cells so special? Well, they were what scientists call immortal. They were the very first human cells ever grown in a lab that could just keep reproducing, endlessly, something no other human cells had ever done. But here's the crucial part. They were taken from her cancerous tumor back in 1951. And it was all done without her knowledge and completely without her consent. And that leads us to the next heartbreaking chapter of this story, how this discovery unfolded for the people who mattered most to Henrietta, her family. The disconnect here is just staggering. On one hand, you have the entire scientific community using Henrietta's cells to change the world, building a multi-million-dollar industry around them. And on the other hand, her family. All they knew was that their mother was gone, taken by cancer way too young. For more than 20 years, they had absolutely no idea that a part of her was, in a way, still alive and making medical history. And the injustice didn't even stop there. The Lacks family never saw a single penny from the profits made from HeLa cells. And then, in this really cruel twist, researchers actually came to them later for blood samples. They told the family it was to test for cancer, but they never fully explained that they were really trying to learn more about Henrietta's amazing cells.
As you can imagine, a situation like this raises some huge ethical questions, and it would eventually spark a long, difficult fight for recognition and for change.
This timeline really puts the family's struggle into stark context. Look at these gaps. Her cells are taken in 1951. It isn't until 6 years later, in 1957, that this idea of informed consent even starts showing up in legal documents. And then, look at this. It took 22 years before her family finally learned the truth in 1973. It's just astonishing. Decades more would pass before patient privacy laws were finally put in place to help prevent this from happening again.
This quote gets to the absolute heart of the matter. Every human being has an inalienable right to determine what shall be done with his own body. It's all about autonomy, about dignity, and about the fundamental right to control our own bodies, a right Henrietta was never given the chance to exercise.
So, after all of that, what are the lasting lessons here? What can we take away from this incredibly powerful story? The entire story really forces us to ask this one huge question. Who has the right to control what becomes of our bodies? It was relevant in 1951, and it's maybe even more relevant today in an age of genetic testing and big data. Who owns your biological material after it leaves your body? Who gets to profit from it?
Henrietta's story opened this conversation for the whole world.
So let's quickly recap the big takeaways. First, behind every great scientific discovery, there are human beings with real stories. Second, our ideas about what's ethical in medicine aren't fixed, they evolve, often because of stories just like this one. Third, Henrietta's life shows how one person's legacy can have an unimaginable, world-changing impact. And finally, it reminds us to always ask the critical questions: who benefits from innovation and at whose cost?
Ultimately, the story of Henrietta Lacks gave a human face to the biological material used in labs everywhere. It forced the scientific community to confront difficult questions about privacy, consent, and justice, and it forever changed the relationship between patients and researchers.
You know, the conversation that Henrietta's story started is far from over. It's happening right now in debates about genetic privacy and tissue ownership. If you want to dive deeper into these really important issues, I definitely encourage you to explore the resources on medical ethics and patient rights that we've linked for you below.